guests, dear viewers, I would like to welcome you for our last interview at the IIP about the elections which happened in Bosnia and Herzegovina this Sunday. And we have our guest, Denis Mishkich. He is a journalist in Austria and a student of political science at the University of Vienna. He was also the first Austrian peace servant in Srebrenica Memorial Center in Bosnia and Herzegovina, where he served for about 1 year, if I remember correctly. Actually, the IIP visited him with our president, Hannes Svoboda. So, Denis, thank you for your willingness to give us the interview. I would like to start the first question maybe with the general results of the elections. And when we speak about the results of the elections in Bosnia and Herzegovina, especially maybe the results of the presidency and about the new members of the presidency, how do you see them?
Well, thank you for having me. And also, just in general, about the results of the presidency, I think they're good. Mm-hmm. They're not and this goes for the whole election, I think, it is not too radically, but still a progressive step. And the civilians of Bosnia and Herzegovina sent a clear signal to Europe and the international community that they do want change, that they do want progress, by having Denis Bećirović and Željko Komšić as two very progressive political actors who are lobbying for a civic Bosnia. Mm-hmm. But then on the other hand, we still have I would say, Serb nationalist as the Serb representative in the presidency. But what I also do find interesting, and this is when, because now I'm back here in Vienna, and I could only catch a breath of the atmosphere by talking, video chatting with some of my former colleagues back in Bosnia, where most of them do live in the Republika Srpska as well. But looking at the results from the parliament of the Federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina, where some people were saying, all right, we had progressive results when it comes to the presidency, but now when it comes to the parliament in the federation, we have SDA again on the top. And if I'm not mistaken, I mean, the votes haven't been counted out finally yet, but as of today, I think it's around 33%. But summing up all the other parties, except for SDA and HDZ-BIH, where we have Naša stranka, we have SDP, and so on, counting up their results and comparing it to, and analysts have done this already, comparing it to the results from the last election, it is also a good, nice, progressive step forward. So it really depends on how you look at it, and from what kind of perspective you look at it.
You mentioned that there are two progressive members of the presidency, the new elected presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina, and one nationalist who is from Serbia. I would like to ask you, how do you see, especially because of this, how do you see the future cooperation between the three presidents of Bosnia and Herzegovina? Because if we were looking at the last presidency and members of the presidency of Bosnia and Herzegovina, when it comes to cooperation, we could, in several cases, we could see two of the presidents without Dodik appearing on several occasions. So can we maybe see a more united presidency with Željka Cvijanović as the Serb member, or not?
No, I don't think so. I think we are still going to have more of the same. Because, and this is what's surprisingly, some Austrian media were writing about as soon as the first results were coming in, that we now have a full progressive presidency in Bosnia and Herzegovina, which is wrong. I mean, a Russian-backed nationalist who is going to do what Belgrade and Moscow is telling them to do is a nationalist. It doesn't matter if they wear a suit and tie or if they wear high heels.
But couldn't we have expected someone else from Serbia, from Republika Srpska?
Yeah, we could have expected Vojin Mijatović, for example, who is, at least from what I see, also a very progressive politician looking towards a perspective of Bosnia being a civic, democratic, multi-ethnical country, but well, his results were very sobering, I would say.
What I have heard from several people who are from Republika Srpska and who didn't vote in the elections because they were disappointed by everybody who was an option for the presidency. They didn't have also anything good to say about Vojin Mijatović, but I don't know many things about him, so I think it's maybe for another interview or another topic to talk about him. But for sure, he's a different kind of stream when we compare SNSD or when we compare SDS or other parties in Republika Srpska. I would like to ask you about young people, especially young people in diaspora. I've been talking also to Vedran Džihić and to Larisa Lojic and to Srđan Barašin in these interviews, and I've told them that what I have heard, especially from Austria, from Vienna, that there were many young people in a row waiting to vote at the embassy of Bosnia and Herzegovina in Austria. So what do you think, what was the role of young people in these elections? We don't have the statistics and the numbers, but still, what do you think? And how will the young people in the future shape the political system and the country itself?
Well, you said already we don't have the numbers and statistics, and I also don't have the comparison to the elections in Bosnia before, because this is the first time I'm politically active for Bosnian elections. But what I can say, you mentioned Larisa Lojic, for example, who has been a colleague of mine, where we have worked together in a youth organization here in Austria called the Bosnian Austrian Youth, which enabled us to, for example, do small political campaigns to get people from the diaspora to vote, explain how the process works. I mean, we had a discussion here last week, if I'm not mistaken, or 2 weeks ago, where Samir and the Bosnian ambassador showed us how complicated this process of actually voting is. And so this is something we contributed. What I also think is that, or what we saw was also that, I mean, young people are interested from the diaspora. They want to know what's going on. We organized a study trip where we had 20 young students visit Belgrade, Zagreb, Sarajevo, and Srebrenica with us. And even though this was more in a historical context, we did look at the political systems in all of the countries and what's going on politically. And what we saw that everyone, but especially those who had roots from the region, and it doesn't matter which country they were from, were very interested, and this interest has still kept going even now, half a year later. But on the other hand, what I see again from my former colleagues and friends is that they're tired of Bosnian politics. But I see it's twofold, is that there's one type of person that the only thing on their mind is how can I finish high school and go to Germany. And on the other hand, we have people who are very politically active, trying to make a change, engaged in NGOs, working as journalists, trying to finish university or a career in academia. But then again, what I see, we don't have many progressive young politicians. So what I would hope maybe is that one of those people, so maybe one of my former colleagues even, who are now working in NGOs or doing their PhDs, may want to think about a career in politics and try to so we can maybe have a more diverse range of politicians, of young politicians.
Let us return for one moment also again to the results and to the general political system in Bosnia and Herzegovina and how it is based on the ethnicity or the three ethnicities in Bosnia and Herzegovina, and it still is, unfortunately. How do you see the cooperation between those nationalists in Bosnia and Herzegovina? Because when one has to talk to another so that the country moves forward, how can we approach, or how can you approach, for an example, in this new presidency with this nationalist from Serbia, as you mentioned, from Republika Srpska? how can a cooperation be established so that it is in the interest of the country, of the development, of the EU integration? Because I think that even though we have different opinions and even though there are many different stories and everything, for a country to function, especially in Bosnia and Herzegovina, a cooperation is really, really important. As you, as a young guy who is in Vienna and who is from Bosnia and Herzegovina, what would you like to see? How would you establish this cooperation? How would you surpass those conflicts and unnecessary discussions which are going on in the political circle in Bosnia and Herzegovina?
I wish I had the answer. But you know what we see with all of the free politicians, ethno-nationalist politicians, is that the main interest they have is how much can I steal? How can I evade legal and political responsibility? And how can I stay in a position of power where I can keep doing what I've been doing? And I don't know. It's a very tough question to answer. I wish I had the answer, but maybe if we could finally agree that, you know, the youth basically waiting in line in front of the German embassy to get a visa and then to move out of the country, or the economic stability are not tenable anymore. We can't keep going like this, and maybe if there's finally, or if there would be a way for everyone to agree on that, maybe then there is a way to rise above these ethno-politics.
Last but not least, there were some also controversial things happening on the election night in Bosnia and Herzegovina. Many people complained and were shocked by the decision of the Office of the High Representative and Christian Schmidt himself for implementing and proposing those changes with the House of Representatives and all the other election changes that he would like to impose and will impose, unfortunately or fortunately, I don't know. How do you see them? How do you comment on this action on the election eve? And how do you see the future of this office in Bosnia and Herzegovina?
Well, about Mr. Schmidt, I remember when he was appointed High Representative, even before he came to Sarajevo, shortly before he came, there were rumors or some articles, investigative articles, saying that he's representing Croat interests, that he's near Croat nationalists. And then the first time he came to the Memorial Center, and most of us had a chance to talk to him. We also talked about politics, of course. Some of us said, all right, maybe we were wrong to judge him. And the last few months have showed that we were right in the first place. I mean, the first time he came near to impose the election law, we had several days of thousands of people protesting in front of the OHR, and him ending up not doing it, but still keeping the space open for the possibility of doing so. And so I think when we talk about timing, I'll get to the other questions as well, but when we talk about timing, I think in this specific case, timing is very perfidious. We will see what kind of I'm expecting, or I'm more hoping for, how can I say, more reactions from the civilians in Bosnia and Herzegovina, but also from NGOs have reacted, but some more powerful reactions, especially from the civilians. And I do expect that these kind of reactions will come when kind of this whole drama about the election night has wind down. What was the other question?
How do you see the future of this office in Bosnia and Herzegovina? How do you see its importance in Bosnia and Herzegovina, its role in Bosnia and Herzegovina's future?
Well, I mean, the sole existence of this institution and a high representative is problematic in itself. I mean, no democratic European country or no democratic country at all should have to function like that.
But many would argue that Bosnia and Herzegovina is a
necessary.
specific case, not necessary, but that Bosnia and Herzegovina is a specific case.
Well, in that sense, it could be a specific case, but you have other examples where it was possible to have different ethnicities in one country without still having a high representative. Well, what I do think it's problematic, and I mean he has showed why it's problematic, solely by imposing this law with the timing he did, without strong support by the international community, by the European Union, for example.
But by America, yes, and
By America, by UK, by Russia, of course, as well. But still, I mean, the fact alone, for me, the fact alone that the European Union, I mean, they still haven't. They put out this one statement, and there wasn't anything else happening. But this showed me that this is not how I perceive diplomacy to work, and. This wasn't the way that this should have been done. Now, I mean, I leave it to lawyers to argue out about how, if electoral reforms are needed, to argue about the constitution of Bosnia and Herzegovina or the federation of Bosnia and Herzegovina. But just coming back to the OHR, well, I do think it's problematic and shouldn't be there anymore. I think it's still going to take some time. I don't know how much time, but it's still going to need some more reforms. Take some more time for it to leave Bosnia, to close the office. But maybe this could be a first step where almost everyone, understood why it's problematic to have the OHR.
To conclude the interview, I would like to ask you, of course, about the future of Bosnia and Herzegovina, but also maybe a bit about EU integration. You're living in Austria, you're living in a European country, and you know how it is to live in an EU country and be a member of this union, and what specialties it has, and with what good it comes. And I suppose that you would also like to see Bosnia and Herzegovina inside the EU. I would like to ask you one question. It's maybe a tough question, but still I would like to hear your opinion about it. Ukraine was given a candidacy for the EU membership. How do you see it for Bosnia and Herzegovina? Did you expect it also to come for Bosnia and Herzegovina, or were you disappointed by some actions of the EU?
I wasn't expecting it to. I was hoping it, of course. It would have been a pleasant surprise, but I wasn't specifically expecting it to be happening for Bosnia and Herzegovina as well. Sure, I was disappointed, but I don't think we can hand out EU memberships just like that. There still has to be some work done in Bosnia. There still are some reforms that have to happen. Yeah.
Do you see a possible EU membership in the next 5 to 10 years for Bosnia?
I hope so.
You hope so?
I hope so. And I really do think, I mean, just from my perspective, it's I can't put a timestamp on when it would be possible, of course. But, the changes we've been seeing over the past 2 years are suggesting, and even now the election, and if you look at the presidency, and I don't know how close the margin was, but also, Dodik being off the political scene as well as Izetbegovic is, and these are the kind of steps that, these small steps that have to be taken towards then Bosnia and Herzegovina being an EU country. But let's also not forget the fact that we have a neighboring EU country who was lobbying for this electoral reform. So while we do, of course, the European Union is a friend in Bosnia and has been financially helping Bosnia along the way. But then again, on the other hand, we have EU member states, just like Hungary and Croatia, who are showing off their destructive behavior, their destructive policies towards Bosnia. So I think we shouldn't just rely on the international community or the European Union in specifically. These changes have to come from within, from our politicians, from our lobbying, and not from somebody coming through the front door, some stranger coming through the front door and putting it all on the table and doing the work for us.
So we hope for a new membership and we stay opportunistic.
Yes.
Thank you very much for the interview, Dennis.
Thank you.